We have a divorce attorney who is joining us this morning from Dallas, Texas, currently cooped up with her husband and three children. And she is from, she attended law school right here in the Green Mountain State. Good morning, Jennifer.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm so happy to have you on. We're just fine. So you've spent a good amount of time back in the 90s here
I
in Vermont.
did. It's in beautiful Vermont. Yes, it was really gorgeous. Yeah.
Do you miss
Lovely.
it?
I do. Yeah, and I would love to get back sometime. I'll tell you, if you take the Vermont winters over the Texas summers, it's
Yeah.
a big trade-off. But yeah, the beauty of Vermont is just unrivaled. So it was a great time.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We're about 20 degrees cooler than average right now, so it's not really feeling like May. It feels more like the end of March. But
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time and for the time change. You're on an earlier clock over there, and we appreciate it so much. You and I got a chance to chat very briefly, and you were telling me that China has reported some drastic increases in their divorce rate, and this has actually made some pretty big headlines. I've been seeing this buzzing lately, and
Yes,
that
our
this
the divorce
yeah,
lawyers
this
are
trend of divorce
sorry.
rates might be headed to the United States.
Yeah, my the divorce colleagues in China, not that I know any personally, but the reports we're seeing is that as soon as the quarantine lifted, the divorce rates escalated. And it's not doesn't come to me as a surprise, right? Because when families are under stress and tension, it brings out, I think, the either the best or the worst in the situation. And certainly there are a lot of families who have just said, you know what, this marriage is not working. This is not a good example we're setting for our children. And I think, before the quarantine, we're so busy in our lives, right? I know I am, with three kids. We're running around all over the place and just doing crazy things. And when the busyness goes away and we don't have all the things to distract us, and we're stuck just looking at each other, I think a lot of couples are reconsidering, is this what I want for the rest of my life? And the other factor I
Yeah.
think too that weighs in is when we've seen so much devastation, so much loss, right? That really also makes you reevaluate and not take for granted the things that are happening in your life. Every moment is precious. And if you're in a really painful relationship, this is a time I think a lot of people have had to really reflect and just decide that this is not something that they want to continue on with.
Yeah. You talk about stress factors, and there's so many that are coming into us from so many different angles.
Yeah.
And if your relationship is or wasn't healthy to begin with, that's just going to exacerbate it. But I mean, the news, let's be honest, is predominantly centered around coronavirus, and not much of that is great. And if you try to find good news with that subject in mind, you've got to really dig for it. But the news is everywhere. It's on our phones. It's on the radio. I mean, no matter where, it's on the internet constantly. So the news isn't great, and your financial situation may be stressed or strained. Maybe you're a small business owner. You throw that in. Now we've got news that our health insurance could be jeopardized. So you got financial stress, you got family stress. Throw kids into the mix who are missing their own friends. They're frankly bored, even if the weather's great. They just going outside. We can only go outside so much. We've watched all the movies. I've got a 5-year-old who's been in tears just missing her friends.
Yeah.
So thankfully we've got the technology of the internet to be able to connect those kids together so they can see each other and do live chatting. But still, there are so many stresses coming in from all different angles, and when things are getting tense, not everybody has a place to go. I mean, some people are just jumping in their car and going for a drive to try to cool off. But where do you go in your house? You can only hide in so many different rooms to have some social distancing from your spouse, right?
Yeah, I will tell you the one thing that we are hearing is that it certainly makes carrying on that extramarital affair a little more difficult. When you get caught in the closet.
Yes. Isn't
Yeah,
that interesting? I didn't even think of that. That it certainly makes it a lot more challenging.
yeah.
Yeah. But
No,
isn't it? Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, JD, you're exactly right. I mean, these are, as we know, we hear over and over again, unprecedented times. But we, at least in my lifetime, there's not been any kind of stress in our life like this that really calls on our internal resiliency. Right? We've
Sure.
had it pretty easy, and we recognize that now. But I've had friends who have lost loved ones, not necessarily to the disease, just the normal course of life when your mother's dying and her deathbed in a hospital and you can't get to her. They won't allow you in to be there. And the stress of loss in
Yeah.
final moments, the loss of
Yeah.
jobs, absolutely. Small business owners are struggling. And, while there's been some federal relief available, that's just created another level of stress as you sit around waiting. Am I going to get a PPP loan? Am I going to have to
Sure.
fire people? I mean, the stress of having to lay off your loyal workers. So it is coming at all angles. And I know for sure with the kids, you're right. How many times can you go outside in your front
Yeah.
yard or on a bicycle ride? Fortunately, one of my teenagers has taken to bicycle riding, so he's going on really long bicycle rides. uh, but what we've learned is, while technology is helpful, right? I mean, this would have been that much more difficult if we hadn't had technology.
Yes.
Not a substitute for human connection.
Yeah.
And I said it's sort of like being hungry and drinking water to fill up your belly, right? It
Yeah.
does something. It gives us some filler, but I just know, we're all craving the hug, right? We just had Mother's Day,
Sure.
and to not be able to hug the ones that we love is definitely a huge strain on our humanity.
My little girl got out yesterday on her bicycle, and we're loosening up some of the restrictions a little bit here in Vermont. I think we've got 10 people or less social gatherings, but the governor is advising still practice the social distancing of being in a crowd of 10 or less. But yesterday she's with her friend who's now 7 years old, and the two of them just miss each other. They wanted to hug, and you know it's so difficult trying to explain all this to a young child too. But you had a great point in that, back back in the old days before all of this happened, we had so much going on in our lives. We were constantly running around to the store. We're just going here, going there. I mean, that's definitely my case. That those were distractions from maybe the less than optimum marital health at home. So things were kind of just coasting along. But now that we don't have all of those mental distractions and physical distractions, got to be here, got to be there, go, 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 run, run, run. We're spending so much more time at home that anything that is unhealthy at home with your relationship is coming to a head.
Yeah, it really is. I think in general, we have a lot to learn on how to be better communicators and better partners in marriage, right? I think we do a really good job of selling the fantasy marriage, the fantasy wedding, and what life is going to be like. And very rarely
Yeah.
is it that. And marriage really wasn't built for that. But the problem is that we don't have the tools to help navigate those very difficult times in marriage. And how do we become better at building connection? Well, a lot of times it's having those difficult conversations. But
Yeah.
when you bring up a sore spot as something, an issue you're having with your partner, that may result in them being very defensive, and you end up in a big fight. And you're just trying to share, hey, it would really help me if you would remember to do this or do that, or whatever the issue is. And so we just have a breakdown in communication. We stop talking because it's so difficult to have those conversations. I think a lot of couples, even if your marriage was a really good marriage, it's easy to take it for granted, and complacency sets in. And people will ask me, what's like the number one killer of marriage? And infidelity and money troubles to me are symptoms of a bad marriage. But complacency, I think, is a
Mm,
huge killer in a relationship, of taking each other for granted, of losing common interests and not spending time with each other. When you were dating, the things that your partner was interested in, you at least pretended to be interested in for the dating period. But
yeah.
in the marriage, we forget to do that. We forget to value and appreciate the things that our partner values and appreciates, and show up in that way. And that could be a real relationship killer. So we just don't have any common interests anymore, outside of the children, perhaps, but we're probably arguing about that as well. Um, and I think, it's the loss of connection and that loss of respect for each other. So those are kind of the big killers in a relationship that I see. And when we're stuck with each other and we don't have the distractions, that's what, we're coming face to face with.
Resentment has got to be one of the top three marriage killers,
Oh,
I would
yeah.
guess.
Yeah. I mean, when you have a loss of common interest and a loss of respect, and um, absolutely resentment builds. And how do you let out that resentment? I mean, we know from studies that have been done. I mean, the Gottman Institute was renowned for this study, but resentment is the number one killer. And how do you let off that resentment? How do you not live in a relationship and build resentment? And I think a lot of it is, what are your expectations of your partner? I once heard a long, long time ago that if you're frustrated, it's because you have unmet expectations. And when I heard that, I thought, okay, that's really interesting, because I can control my expectations, right? I can make the adjustment so I'm not so frustrated all the time. And that was really helpful for me when I had toddlers. Um,
Sure.
because if I expected we were all going to sit down at the dinner table and enjoy, an easy dinner, I probably would be frustrated with the food flying on the floor and somebody's crying and all of that. So if we change our expectations, a lot of times that can really help change the resentment level. Um, does that mean that you settle? I mean, yeah, sometimes it might mean that you settle, that you really focus on
Right.
the things that are really important. And I wouldn't give those parts of yourself up. But the other things you probably need to let go of, right? And not allow yourself to feel just that anger and resentment. It's just part of being in
Wow.
a relationship.
That's so well said. You've got to pick your battles and reprioritize what pushes your buttons. It's funny how when this all started, and the way social media responded and the news responded to the fact that we were going to be on lockdown, which is such a an interesting word. I mean, it's like we're not literally locked in our homes, and especially now with things lifting up, we can get out more. We can see people that we love and care about. In many cases, not all cases, but um, we can get out. But when we are told that we're going to be in lockdown, when this whole thing first started, I think there were a lot of relationships that were like, "Oh, this is great. I get to spend more time with my husband or my wife and my kids." And then there was somewhat of a funny spin on all of it. The memes that you see, and you know, um, um it's funny, haha. I'm at I'm stuck at home with my wife, and the hashtag together at home, and all that stuff. Um, but it seemed like there's a shift of what's funny and what's enjoyable has shifted into some real stress and strain on relationships. When this first started, even I was saying, along with the rest of the world, oh, there's going to be a huge baby boom. I mean, especially in China,
Right.
there's going to be this huge baby boom, and I'm just wondering if you kind of have to sleep in the same bed to have a baby boom, right?
Right. And now couples are, I think they're setting their clocks so, they go to bed as the other one's getting up just to avoid each other. Yeah. I was laughing because, the couples who are all thrilled about being stuck together, they're probably the new couples, right? Just
Yes.
fallen in love. And
Yes. Yes.
and there's nothing more exciting than spending all that quality time together. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different rhythm to our lives. And if you're not uh, in a relationship that is really meeting your needs, I mean, like you said, I think the resentment builds. The needs for sex are different between couples, and
Yep.
that's something that often gets fought over, and can definitely be exacerbating the issues and the problems. I mean, some of the other things, that we see happen when those fractures have really set in on a marriage is you have people seeking pleasure outside of the marriage, right? And that's, I mean, whether that's just like overeating, or whether it's overspending and having
Yeah.
Amazon packages delivered. I mean, those are all avoidance techniques, right? Or maybe it is spending, a little too much time online doing other things to replace, what you're not getting your needs met at home. So I
Sure.
definitely, that is something that is on the rise. I think infidelity has been a little bit challenging for some people, but it still happens and it's still there. And certainly, what you can do via Zoom, I think
Sure.
we'll see coming up in the divorce rates. But yeah, I mean, if you came into this with a good relationship and you have good coping skills, I mean, this there's a lot of silver linings in this time. I mean, I know I have, my oldest son is in college,
Yeah.
and I feel like I got a bonus semester with him. He's not exactly thrilled, although he's been a good sport about it. But it's been nice to have him home. And so there have been good things, and I think in the midst of the stress, you have to look for those things that have bring meaning and joy, and have gratitude where you can have gratitude. That's just a healthy coping skill. But in terms of the relationship, if you're really wanting to make your relationship work, and this time together has showed you that there are issues that really need to be resolved, it's still a great time to work on your relationship. Get a professional involved. Therapists are doing the telehealth. They've been doing it for years. Um, and I mean, it can be incredibly helpful to bring in a third party to work with both of you if you're both committed to doing that. I mean, that's the issue. I think if people are committed to their relationship, they're going to find a way through to make it work. The problem is when you have one person who's committed and one person who's on the way out the door, and
Yeah.
that's a big challenge. There's a lot of heartache in those situations. There's a program called Discernment Counseling that I would suggest for people if you really are kind of weighing, do I want a divorce? Do I not want a divorce? It's a like one of the biggest decisions you're going to make, second only to deciding to marry that person.
Right.
And if you all do have discernment therapists who are trained in discernment counseling in Vermont, I checked on the website. But it's not marriage therapy. The purpose of it is very short term and limited, but it is to help the couple together decide whether they stay in the marriage or they end the marriage. And I'll tell you, if you're getting ready to end a marriage and you feel like that's where you're going, I think discernment counseling can be a tremendously helpful way to have that conversation with your spouse, really, because it gives you both an opportunity to enter into the winding down of your marriage in a way that is healthy. And, even if your marriage wasn't healthy, but that it can at least provide a good framework for that discussion to happen.
Whatever those links are and that information, I'm sure that you're going to get it to me, and I'll be posting it up on social media to get folks that are watching and listening right now to be able to get connected to that here in Vermont and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it seems like back to infidelity, that you said it's a little bit more challenging at this time. Yeah, I could bet. I can bet that it would be. And it also seems like people are getting busted quicker. They're getting caught quicker, and
For
it's
sure.
and easier, and that is making your phone ring over there.
It is. And that's always, sorry, we've got a teapot whistling in the
Oh,
background.
no problem.
The house is waking up and you're getting all the
I
noise
might.
along with it.
I could have a 5-year-old sitting on top of my shoulders here at any second, so you never know.
That's exactly right. It's definitely been an interesting time to be working out of the home, but
Oh, sure.
for couples who are used to both working outside the home, right? You're used to your 10, 12 hour days spent in the office.
Yeah.
And now here you are in the same confined space. So yeah, no, I mean, infidelity there's nothing new with that. That is, when your marriage is breaking down, let's face it, somebody comes along and is nice and kind and offers a little interest, and that can, you can fall into that situation pretty easily. And so I think if you are recognizing that your marriage is heading in that direction, you need to recognize your own vulnerabilities. And I always say it's a lot easier to it's a lot more compassionate to be honest with your spouse, right? Than it is to be living this secret life where you think you're hiding from them and you think you're protecting them from the pain and disappointment, but you're really not. You're really just adding to it. So, if you are in a place where you know that this relationship is not the relationship for you, I think one of the most compassionate things you can do is to begin the process to end it in a compassionate way.
I'm wondering if there's going to be any hats or T-shirts or memes or what have you that or car decals that are going to come out on the backside of all this that say, "Our marriage survived the coronavirus lockdown," because it's fair to say that marriages and relationships that get through this might be stronger.
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you, for a lot of people, these stressors can bring each other together and really remind each other of what matters in life, and of their common values and their core value is people. Absolutely, it can bring people together. And that would be ideal. And I think that's definitely a possibility and a hope for so many of our families. And there's nothing, if that's not happening in your life, but you want it to happen right now, there's nothing wrong in asking for help, right? And reaching out and trying to put pieces in place and support systems in place so you can have that family that is there for each other in times of stress. But if that's not the case, if you're wondering, will my marriage survive COVID-19? There probably is a chance that it might not. And what do you need to do in the front end to, right now, even though I don't know, in Vermont and Texas, our courts are closed, so they still are having hearings and we're still able to proceed in the divorce case. But what do you do during this time? And I think that this is a time of gathering information. You may have a lot of assumptions about divorce that are not correct. I always tell people most of the time, the divorces that make the news are either Hollywood divorces or New York divorces. And we're in Texas. That's a whole different set of laws. So whatever you think is going to happen, it isn't the way it's going to play out in Texas. And, it's the same for Vermont. So I think taking time and just picking up a phone and having a consultation with the divorce lawyer can really help you. You know what? I really need to double down on my marriage. I really do not want to go through a divorce right now. What can I do to make this work? Or you may learn that, yeah, you know what? This is absolutely the right decision for me. And what are my next steps? What information do I need to begin gathering? So I think if you are asking that question and you're kind of wondering, I really think you have three options, right? So one is to really double down on the bring in the counselor to work with you individually or to work with with you and your partner. There are a lot of relationship coaches. Coaching is a little bit different than therapy, but that can also be helpful, very targeted. Get the discernment counseling and visit with a lawyer and just learn what your options are. I think are good. And sometimes people come in and sit down with me and we walk through the divorce options and that was the best thing they could do for their marriage and they go back and work on their marriage. So I always say I'm not
Wow.
in the business of selling divorce. You get a divorce because you need a divorce. This isn't something that that you do just because you're changing one set of problems for another set of problems. So it doesn't make everything just go away.
How are
But
you
it
how are you
certainly is.
interacting with clients through video conference or just by telephone mostly?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of video conferencing, and I have been surprised in the professional realm how effective it is. I was really resistant. I'm an old school person. I like the touch and the feel. I like sitting in the room with somebody and being
Sure.
able to, read their body language and look at things together and plan things out. But video conferencing has actually been very effective. The other thing we're doing here in Texas is mediations via video conferencing, which has been tremendously successful. I think that's really worked well for a lot of my clients. So we've been able to finish the divorce process for a lot of people who have had plenty of time to work on their divorce and pull the documents together and get everything ready. So, just because all of this is going on, it doesn't mean that you don't have options. And I will just say, JD, because this is such an important topic when we talk about families that are really struggling. I don't want to not at least shed light on the domestic violence, right? So
Oh,
um,
yes.
yeah, in these really stressful times, we know that the domestic violence has skyrocketed through the roof,
Yes.
and that comes at such a tremendous cost to our children,
Yeah.
in our
Yeah.
communities, and to the victims of domestic violence. So, we've got fabulous domestic violence shelters in our area that I've been a real supporter of, just because they do such good work. They do provide shelter as an option for a place to go, and they are open and accepting. And I'm sure you all have similar resources where you are, because if you feel like you're trapped and you don't have any options, it's a really vulnerable place to be. And most of the time, there are options. You just might need help to uncover them and to see them, because you have your blinders on and you can't see them. But I do bring that up because we know that that's been on the rise as well.
Yeah, in Vermont, the bottom line is to call 211 and begin there. You talk about essential workers. The folks on the other end of that line are right there to direct you and steer you toward lots of different services here in Vermont that can help in different ways. Doesn't always have to be a shelter, um,
No,
but so many different resources to get you some help. But yeah, domestic violence is just, I mean, as I said, going back to what I was saying earlier and what we were discussing earlier is you've got stresses coming in from all different angles. You have financial stress, you got even the stress of just going to the store, who's going in, who's not, who's going to wear a mask, and did you forget the mask, and the kids are bored, the kids, they miss their friends, they're trying to figure out, why they're spending so much time with mom or dad or mom and dad. And for a little 5-year-old to, she's so adorable. She thinks, that there's this huge bug that's flying around, and and that's why we have to spend so much time inside. And uh, it's the bug, it's the
It's
big
a
bug.
bug.
So you've got we're all getting hit from so many different angles. And for those of us that are working, that are not quarantined at home, not spending uh, a lot of time with our husbands and wives and partners at home, we are still working, whether it's a hospital or a nursing home, or you're an LNA or a nurse. You're working on the road crew. You're a janitor at a hospital. what Whatever it may be, for the folks that are working, they're working a whole hell of a lot harder than they were before, and they're probably putting in more hours and dealing with having to wear a mask all the time, and more added stress at work, maybe more hours. They're coming home to a mom or dad who might be working from home, who has had their added stress. Maybe it's the kid their child who's not in daycare, or whatever it may be. We're all getting hit from so many different angles here. And for those of us that are able to duck and dodge 80% of the stress that's going on, kudos to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the anxiety level, right? I mean, stress and then anxiety, and I heard recently a good mental health professional, psychologist, was talking about, if your brain is really caught up in the whirlwind of what ifs, and you're having a difficult time like processing information, because we are getting it at all angles. Give yourself, sit down with a journal and give yourself some time to write down all the things that you're worried about, right? Whether it's a parent getting the illness, whether it's loss of your job, all the things that are worrying you. And then go through those and look at them and say, what on out of this list, what are things I can do something about, right?
Yeah,
Maybe it's my own health. Maybe what I need to do is, well, I can't control whether I get COVID or not. What I can do is make sure that I'm eating healthier, I'm taking time to exercise. You're building in routines and structure to your day, which has been so critical in my
sure,
household. I know my kids are all homeschooling, but at least they have to be up at 8:30 and logging into a Zoom class. And every
sure.
school's doing it a little bit differently. But I've been thankful for that rhythm. It just, it's similar, but the stressors are there. So give yourself a break. Have a little grace for yourself and your partner. When they come home, know they need that period of time to detox, to kind of calm down and settle down, whether they've been out, working in construction, or working on the front lines, or in the trucking industry, or I mean, there's so many important people who are making our lives happen right now, to the very best that they can. And we all need to have a little more patience with each other in general, but especially with our loved ones.
Sure. We're gonna finish up here. I know you've got to get on with your day, but you're right. Regiment routine is so critical. Figure out what it could be for you and try to make it happen. Uh, you also say that divorce happens
Mm,
to good people. This is not
yeah.
your defining moment in life. It is it's not your final. It's
Yeah, I always say divorce isn't a destination, right?
right.
Does not define who you are. It's a process, it's a legal process. It has a beginning, it has an end, and you have the rest of your life when the divorce is over. So, there's a lot of stigma around divorce. And I just,
Yeah,
a lot of good people get divorced, people who value their family and value marriage, but they also realize that the marriage that they're living isn't the example they want to set for their children.
yeah,
And just the other thing I would add is that divorce does not have to destroy your family. So if you are heading into a divorce, the values that you have, you can carry with you through the divorce process. And you can set that as your goal. And when you're talking with divorce lawyers, make sure that their values are in alignment with yours. I see people go through the divorce process and they come out stronger on the other side. They're better co-parents because they're not having to argue over all the things that they argued about in marriage. And so that is definitely possible. And so anybody who's considering it, I just throw that out there as a hope for you as you are weighing your options.
What's your website? How can folks see and read more? What resource can you point us in the direction of? And make sure you send me those discernment and counseling links too, because I really want to get those up as well.
I will. Thank you for asking. My website is hargravefamilylaw.com. And you can find us on Facebook as well, where we post a lot of social media and a lot of informative blogs and videos. So we would love to keep in touch with anybody who is interested in, the way we view divorce. We're not unique. There are a lot of other wonderful lawyers who have the same approach throughout our country. And I think, to realize that our families matter and they are precious, and we need to do what we can do to take care of them. But yeah, follow us on Facebook and come visit our website. And we'd love to, I'll send you the links for discernmentcounseling.com and some of the other valuable links that we have. I really appreciate the opportunity, JD. It's been great visiting with you this morning.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. We really appreciate it. I hope we'll be able to stay in touch and get you back on here as a guest at some point. Again, thank you for all of your time this morning, live out in Dallas, Texas, where it's a little warmer than it is here. And boy, is the food good there too. Jennifer Hargrave, who is a divorce attorney. Thank you again, Jennifer.
You bet. Thank you.
We appreciate it. Gosh, boy, has that widened our eyes and made us think a little bit more about reevaluating our relationships, whether it be marriage or otherwise during this time.